My whole life, people said the old survival tricks were outdated, useless, or exaggerated. But here, on Backyard Wisdom, we prove them wrong every single day. And today's lesson is, well, one of the strongest examples of that. Arctic families used a roof design so quiet, so stable, and so storm-resistant that it stayed unchanged for over 1,000 years. While modern builders fight wind shear, snow load, and ice damage with expensive materials, Viking communities solved the same problems with nothing more than timber, sod, and a structural idea most people today have never even heard of. Let's start with why this technique mattered more than any other element of Arctic construction. In the Arctic and subarctic lands of early Scandinavia, the biggest threat wasn't cold. Humans can adapt to cold with layers, fire, and shelter. The real killer was wind. Constant pressure, sudden gusts, and the shift between wet and frozen seasons destroyed more homes than temperature ever did. If your roof failed, the home failed with it. Viking families learned quickly that a standard wooden roof acted like a drum in a storm, loud, rattling, and vulnerable. Noise wasn't just annoying. Noise meant movement. Movement meant weakness. A roof that made sound in a storm was a roof that was losing the battle. This is where the silent roof trick came in, and it began with a single principle: turn your roof into part of the earth. Instead of building a roof meant to shed the world away, they built a roof meant to merge into it. This took the form of a low-pitched structure covered with layers of birch bark and sod. The bark acted as the waterproof membrane. The sod, thick, heavy and alive, acted as insulation, ballast, and most importantly, sound-deadening mass. When wind hit the roof, it didn't rattle wood. It rolled over living material. This created a house that didn't telegraph storms, didn't creak, and didn't vibrate itself apart over the years. The trick wasn't just stacking sod on wood. The genius was in how the layers were arranged. Arctic families built their roofs with a sequence that has been confirmed by archaeological digs and preserved farmsteads across Norway and Iceland. First came wide planks laid across rafters. These weren't tightly spaced. Gaps allowed the structure to flex slightly under load rather than crack. On top of that went birch bark in overlapping sheets, always with the outer layer facing down to shed water. Birch bark contains natural oils and resins that resist rot even after decades of freezing and thawing cycles. Only then was the sod added, always cut with roots intact. A fresh block of sod taken from healthy turf knits itself back together when laid down. It becomes a single mass, heavy enough to anchor the roof without nails or stone weights. What made the roof silent wasn't magic, it was physics. Wind noise happens when surfaces vibrate. These roofs didn't vibrate because the sod absorbed impact the same way soil absorbs the thud of footsteps. The weight stabilized the planks so gusts couldn't lift or shift them. Even the slope played a role lower angles force wind to glide across rather than dig under. Everything about the build prioritized friction, mass and absorption. In a world where metal nails rusted and wood shrank during winter, a roof held down by living turf was more reliable than anything else available. You're probably wondering how this translates to modern life, and here's where the real action begins. If you own land, even a small plot, you can experiment with a small-scale version of this. Many off-grid builders today still use birch bark and sod roofs because they're cool in summer, warm in winter, quiet in high winds, and blend into the environment. A practical starting point is a shed or a small outbuilding. Begin with a roof built to handle weight. Sod roofs are not for flimsy frames. Once reinforced, lay a modern waterproof membrane, or, if you want to follow Viking logic more closely, use layered birch bark. Add a root-intact sod layer cut from existing turf. Water it lightly once installed. Within a season, the roof becomes stable and living. Another practical application is building a noise-proof shelter or bunker. Preppers who want a storm-resistant shelter or root cellar can borrow the same principles. The key is creating a surface that doesn't transmit vibration. Covering a structure with turf reduces heat loss, muffles outside sound, and stabilizes the building against gusts. It also provides camouflage. A shelter covered in sod blends into the ground, which was another advantage for Viking farms during raids. Homes with sod roofs were harder to spot from a distance, giving them extra moments of safety. There's also an overlooked security benefit modern survivalists rarely talk about: fire resistance. A sod roof won't ignite easily. While century-old wooden shingles went up like tinder during attacks or lightning strikes, sod stayed damp and fireproof. When you stack that with silence and insulation, you start to understand why Arctic families kept this technique in their toolkit for centuries. If you want the ultimate Viking detail, here's the part almost no documentary talks about. The roots binding the roof acted as a living reinforcement system. Over time, the grasses and ground cover didn't dry out. They grew. Their roots wove themselves into a natural net, holding everything together. Instead of weakening over time, the roof matured. A 5-year-old sod roof was stronger than a 1-year-old one. Modern engineering rarely has a material that improves with age, but Viking builders use one every day. This is what makes the silent Viking roof trick something worth studying, preserving and applying today. It's not nostalgia. It's not romanticizing the past. It's respecting the fact that ancient builders solve problems modern people still struggle with: cost, noise, wind, insulation, and structural stress. And they solved them with materials available everywhere, even now: wood, bark, turf, and time. If you want the full breakdown of how to build a micro-version for your own property, or want me to cover the birch bark waterproofing method in depth, just say the word and I'll break it down step by step.